Welcome viewers from Lost City Books to Stages with Rachel Kauder Nalebuff and Mei Mei Chang. For those of you watching, let's see. Got a few viewers in, so I'm saying my hellos. My name is Shady Rose, and I am the events manager here at Lost City Books. We have a wonderful event for you all tonight. We're going to talk about Stages, the recent publication from Thick Press by Rachel, and we're going to talk about Mei Mei's artwork and how the two have common themes, how the two artists relate to each other, and all kinds of fun stuff. So stay tuned. First, I'll tell you a little bit about Lost City Books. Lost City Books is owned by Adam. Some of you may know him, Adam Waterous. He's a veteran, a dog lover, and a longtime resident of DC. We also have a very close-knit community of staff who work here, and we have what I like to call some of DC's coolest kids, you know, artists, educators, musicians, writers, and of course, avid readers of all backgrounds coming together to make this an amazing place to work and amazing place to be. Those of you who are watching who have been in the store or have gotten books from us, thank you for being here. You know, we're a little off kilter and quirky, so we're happy to have you. Next, our featured author for today is Rachel Kauder Nalebuff. Rachel Nalebuff is the author of Stages, the book we'll be talking about tonight, and is a writer working often in performance and oral history. She's the editor of My Little Red Book, a collection of people's first period stories, and co-editor of the Feminist Utopia Project with Alexandra Brodsky. She runs a memoir program for seniors with Caitlin Ryan O'Connell and many friends through the New York City Department of Aging. And we'll have we'll learn a lot more about Rachel as the night goes on. Meimei Chang is a local multimedia artist, received her Master of Fine Arts in Photography from Ohio University in 2002. And as a mixed media and installation artist, Meimei explores various media to bridge her internal and external worlds. She's a lifelong student of the human psyche, fascinated by the mind's ability to focus on details great and small without limits. Using her internal symbols, she creates rich visual images that are both highly personal and accessible by all. And we'll get to see a bit of Meimei's work later tonight. I'll tell you a little bit about Thick Press, which is a really fun collaboration. I'm so glad that we get to work with Thick Press on this event tonight. Thick Press is a collaboration between Erin Siegel, a social worker, and Julie Cho, a designer, which aspires to a practice that is loving, reflexive, playful, and collaborative. Above all, they want to make unusual books with others. Inspired by artists' books and chapbooks, Thick Press publishes books that cross genres and disciplines. All of their books relate to working or living in the thick of human experience. And that pretty much sums up everything we're going to talk about tonight. So I'll take a moment to reintroduce Rachel. And I think I can stop sharing. And Rachel, if you want to come on.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Shady. Thank you so much for making this event possible. And I just, want to give a shout out to Shady, who is navigating multiple open tabs and websites right now. Thank you, Erin and Mei Mei, and to anyone who is joining tonight. I'm really grateful that you made it here. That's no small thing, and I'm glad we can be together for a little while. So I'm going to introduce Stages and tell you how it came to be. I'm going to read a few pages from the book with the help of Erin. And yes, also really grateful to you, Erin, for making this a much more dynamic reading experience. So Stages is a hybrid collection of my own writing and interviews with end-of-life care workers. The book follows the process of making a play at a nursing home and weaves together two threads. The first is all of the research leading up to the play, and the second is how the creation of that play affected my life and my politics. In 2017, I was commissioned to work with a nursing home to create a piece of theater to honor and recognize the labor of nursing home workers who work with death every day. I interviewed a cross-section of staff, from nurses to custodial workers to nutritionists, about their day-to-day, the challenges in their jobs, and how they've built resilience while working in a healthcare system which does not value care. These interviews became the starting text for a play that was then performed by nursing home staff in the Riverside Church in New York. And the performance basically was a way to make all of this invisible labor become visible and public. And we worked with a choreographer, Rachel Burnson, and composer Coleman Zurkowski to integrate breath and movement to create this very ritualistic space where we could hold everyone's losses. Erin came to that performance, and after that, we started talking about how we could continue sharing the interviews in a book form as a resource. And now that death is such a part of public life, I think this book is both much more useful and in some ways easier to read. I think we can move past the initial discomfort with the subject and hopefully engage more deeply with the emotions and insights in the interviews. So I mentioned there were two threads. The second thread is basically my own journey alongside the creation of this play. When I started the project, I thought these interviews were totally separate from my life, and they quickly became intertwined as I began to recognize that grief and mourning are a vital dimension of being alive, and that this applies not just to death, but also to the full catastrophe of everyday life, as writer Jon Kabat-Zinn puts it. In the book, my writing is interspersed between the interviews. These fragments draw from a journal I kept at the time, as well as later reflections, and offer a window into my obliviousness and the ways that I often blundered around death as my relationship to it evolved. These passages form a kind of buffer around the intensity of the conversations, and I also hope offer a kind of comfort from seeing vulnerable growth. So now I'd love to read a little from the book to give you a sense of this project. We're going to read the first interview in the book. So Erin has very graciously volunteered to read with me, and Shady, could you share the first page, page 1, and Erin and I are going to read it together. Erin is going to be reading the voice of Rosa, a housekeeper who at the time of the conversation had been working at the nursing home for 12 years. Let's see if this works. And worst case scenario, Erin and I have our own books, but I really wanted to show everyone the PDF because Julie Cho, the other half of Thick Press, did such a beautiful job of laying the text out in a way that really facilitates, I think, reflection. Okay, great. So I'll read me. Okay, you ready, Erin?
Rachel, before you start, let's just make sure, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay, wonderful. All right, here we go. So, a conversation with Rosa. How did you become comfortable with death?
If you don't accomplish anything in life, you accomplish death. I always wondered what life is like after death. I've seen a lot of dead people, people who get shot. How does it feel? Where do people go? I'm curious. I've always been curious about how you take care of a wound. How do you take a heart out? I watched a lot of medical TV. I wanted to be a mortician, but I couldn't work while being in school.
Beyond your official position, what do you do here?
I'm a housekeeper, but I notice what people need. I take people's shoes off. I turn the temperature up. There's this woman who lives here who doesn't get a lot of visitors. So I brought her a plant, this purple plant. Now she calls it her baby. People ask me for favors. Will you go buy donuts? And I'll do it. One woman gave me a shopping list for Walmart, and I did it. Sometimes because I feel bad, sometimes because they're like family.
With your own money, on your own time?
Yes, on my own time. The other day I had to do something with my daughter, but I told her we had to stop at the dollar store because a resident wanted a hair scarf. My daughter's used to it. It's a part of her life. I've bought residents wigs, potato chips, cheese puffs. A lot of people lose socks in the laundry.
What is your advice about dying?
The shoulda, woulda, couldas. Don't let someone pass away with any of those. Tomorrow isn't promised to anyone, so take care of those. Reconcile with family.
How do you imagine death?
I imagine it just as being free.
Thank you, Erin. Okay, so Shady, could you now pull up page 2? I had coffee with a lawyer who had seen all of the world's darkness. I was telling her about interviewing nursing home staff, and we started talking about how we harbor the delusion that we will, 1, not die, and 2, live to be old. At least in white privileged circles, there's the sense that money can cure illness and buy longevity. So we are completely unprepared when death happens. 2 years ago, her little brother had died in an accident. She leaned over the table and whispered, I tell all my friends, if you want your children to have a sibling to grow old with, you have to have at least 3 kids. That's why we're getting pregnant again this year. No one wants to hear it, but it's true. Shady, could you pull up page 3 now? Great. So I'm kind of skipping around the book, but I wanted to give you a sense of these fragments of my own writing. When Sam came over at night, the sky was bright pink like a conch shell. We talked about how much pain is caused by thinking it's quote unquote too late. Oh, well, I've never talked with my roommates about how we should all take out the trash, but now that we've lived together for a year, it's too late. I'll just continue taking the trash out myself and resent everybody. oh, I've already been working alongside him for months. I can't ask him what his name is now. It's all right. I just won't know the name of the person who is eating their lunch while I am eating my lunch. I've already invested 10 years in the theater. It's too late. I'm stuck. And we are in our 20s. So since publication, so many of the themes and crises that are discussed in this book feel much more in public view. And I wanted to turn to two more pages that I think feel more explicitly connected to this moment before I kind of share a final reflection and turn it over to Meimei. Erin, would you join me for one more time and read for George, who is a senior manager of therapeutic arts and enrichment programs? And we will start midway through the interview. So I'm going to start with the question, what is something you wish more people understood about nursing homes?
There's so much adversity we as the staff encounter every day in our lives. You're dealing with loss and stress at home. You're dealing with loss and stress at work. So then when you're asking someone to be a caretaker, it's already a lot to ask. More facilities, hospitals, nursing homes, restaurants. We need places to care for our staff. It could be physical, it could be spiritual. Something as simple as giving someone 50 minutes to have tea. All we can do is give people resources.
How have things changed over the years that you've worked here?
No one who lives here now was here when I started. I've seen this place completely recycle itself.
What do you hope for the nursing home staff in the future?
A culture where we express our gratitude. A real thank you from a supervisor goes a long way. People don't want to party once a year. That's not thanking them for the work they did today.
What's a challenge that you face working in this industry?
We're trained to deal with loss, but often family members have no idea how to handle it. People's guilt or lack of knowledge makes it hard. People get hurt when a resident spits food in their face. We have to explain, this isn't the person who took you to the ball game. This is a shell of who they are.
How does working here affect how you view aging in your own life?
Parents don't always do the right thing, but as long as they haven't physically or mentally abused you, you gotta be there for them. I'm the caretaker for my mother. I want to visit so much that my mom pushes me away. Me, on the other hand, if you want to visit, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine. I don't want to be a burden.
Thank you, Erin. Yeah, okay, wonderful. I'm really grateful to you for allowing all of us to hear that conversation. And actually hear it. I've tried reading just myself, and it's like a horrible flat experience. So yes, all of us are grateful to you, Erin. I'm just going to read one more page. Like, I just have this desire to read it from the book itself. The book object is so important, and yeah, the screen just isn't the same. So you get to watch it from the screen, but hopefully that will make listening a little easier to follow. Coleman called me late at night to talk through music for the show. He had been thinking about the internet and the absence of ceremony around death. We mourned Anthony Bourdain, but like for 2 days and all on our phones. A police or school shooting might not even get that much. A week later, it feels like it never happened. As Coleman kept talking, I started looking out the window. I started thinking about how I've separated the politics of the nursing home from my own life. After interviews, I always want to shake someone and say, how can you put people through the abysses of grief without providing emotional resources? We're not just talking about physical exploitation, we're talking about the exploitation of people's souls. But the nursing home is just a microcosm of my world. How is grief valued in my life? Is it? Growing up, my family talked about grief in terms of how quickly you could get back to work. In the academic part of the city where we lived, there were no vigils. I never saw candles on the street. Now I take in my friends' sorrows alongside the tragedies of the world every day, in spare moments on the subway, on the toilet, in bed, but I rarely remember what I read. Information, it seems, is not a substitute for grief. Of course, of course, I think I need someone in my life, someone in my real life with power in my life to say, please take a minute. Or I need some kind of value system, some kind of culture, some kind of circle, some kind of march, some kind of protest, some kind of hand on my shoulder in my real life to say, take some time. Please take time. Take time with others. This is as important as drinking water. This is important, and to ignore this kills some essential part of you. When the people I interview are forced to rush through relentless loss, they become numb, unable to care for the next resident. I have passed by so many griefs, and I am afraid. I'm afraid for myself, and I'm afraid of not caring, because I do care. I care so much about the world. I think I do. No, I do. I really do care, or I want to actually care. And I'm really afraid for the world if there are others like me too. So that's a bit of the book to give you a sense of stages. And I did want to reflect a little bit, and Jay, thank you so much for making that smooth for folks listening to follow along. I did want to just reflect a little bit on stages in this particular moment for a couple minutes because, we've been working on this project. I've been working at this nursing home since 2016, 2017, and this book has been in the works for several years. And now many of the, yes, as I said, crises in our elder care system are making headlines, which was sort of unimaginable 6 months ago. And there's something that actually gives me a lot of hope about seeing all of this make headline news and seeing all of the signs in windows thanking essential workers. But I also still feel when I return to these interviews a kind of disorientation going on. So many articles. I really want to point out how so many articles recently that talk about the death toll in nursing homes still ignore the death toll of staff and have even gone so far as to blame staff for the death of patients, when in fact, I think these conversations show that what really is to blame is a healthcare system and value system that asks people to do our most physically and spiritually demanding work without adequate resources. And that all of the statistics also around nursing home deaths, I think, can be misused. We know that around 40% of COVID deaths have occurred in nursing homes. That's so many people, and those statistics can often arouse pity, as though these deaths were inevitable because it's a vulnerable population. But I find that within this narrative, it's hard to feel public grief or outrage over the fact that there are guilty parties and that these deaths are the result of structural negligence. There have been more recent findings that show that nursing home workers weren't given adequate PPE and still had to take care of a whole floor wearing the same gear, and that poverty wages meant that nurses often had to work second shifts across multiple nursing homes, further spreading the virus. And there is still almost zero regulation for nursing home minimum staffing requirements or pay standards or protected time off. So all to say, these deaths and these statistics are not inevitable. These are caused by lack of protections that we can also change. And at the beginning of this project in 2017, conversations around the Green New Deal felt really lofty. And even right when the book was published, Erin and I started talking more seriously about how this book is connected to the Green New Deal. And at this point, it does really feel like the only way forward. Just to explain what the Green New Deal is, it's not a single policy, which can be a little bit confusing. It's a congressional resolution that shifts Congress's priorities from an economy of extraction to an economy of care. And no matter who wins the election, I think this is going to be so vital and require so much advocacy on the ground. And to end on a personal level, I think Stages does highlight the internal work that we can be doing all of the while, which includes taking time and making time as much as we are able to rest and to feel the sorrow that we carry. I know there is a lot right now. And to not let these griefs pass us by, to not go numb, because as one nursing home worker says in the book, grief is the other side of holding something dear. And I've been finding it really easy to get detached and to feel cynical and to feel despair. And for me, that's often a sign that I haven't acknowledged a loss. So whatever it is that you're carrying, I hope the conversations and Stages show you that it's valid and important to recognize your losses. I really feel this from Mei Mei's work too, which I'm so excited to get to know better. And lastly, just to say, there is no hierarchy of grief, and there is no grief that is too little or illegitimate, because grief is grief, and I hope we'll let ourselves feel it and feel it communally however we can, and that this will help us gain clarity on all that we do hold dear. So I'll leave it there and turn it over to you, Shady. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Those were really beautiful selections, and I was very moved to hear the words directly from people that are working hands-on with grief, so to speak. I'd like to open the floor to Erin and Mei Mei here if they want to ask you any questions about Stages before we start talking about Mei Mei's work as well.
I would like to share a really short memory, I guess long memory. So I had a hair inside the jar. As you know, visual artists always have weird stuff. So this is because I didn't read Rachel's book until today, really quick. So this is the 85 years old lady's hair. When I volunteered at a nursing home many years ago when I was in college. And so this is like a really coincidence. Like I didn't know Rachel's work until today. So that brings back to me the memory of when I met Mary many years ago. So thank you, Rachel.
Shady, you knew.
I like to hope I have a knack for this. Yeah, I have a question for you a little bit, just a little bit about what the timeline of interviews and working on this project was like in the thick of, speaking of the thick of human life, in the thick of your life, you know, how much space did it occupy, and what sort of transformations did you go through as you were working on this project?
I feel like it's hard to answer in a question in a sentence, because I think it was a huge growing period, and I kind of needed a book to explore that. I had originally worked at this nursing home to create a play with residents who were also at the end of their lives. And so that was kind of how I jumped in. And I think I jumped in really to the deep end because I did not have a lot of experience with aging and the kind of disability that often accompanies end of life, and making a play, which I had studied as like a polished craft with a final end product that you share, was just completely turned over its head. And I kind of had to relearn everything that I thought art was, and that I thought theater was, and that I and that I thought was valuable, I guess, because it wasn't possible to do from the very beginning, from the very first day that I started working there, where in our community theater group, no one who came in could even hear one another. And so I was like, well, what does it mean to make a play? And people over the course of making that play that first year did pass away, and that was really hard on the group. And it also meant like that this play had to be a flexible, fluid structure. And yeah, I just found myself really questioning my priorities. Like on my own time at home, I would come home every day and I felt like the nursing home started to make more and more sense, and my personal life started to make less and less sense. Yeah, I also just remember on the very first day when I worked there, no one introduced themselves in terms of who they had been professionally. And I think up until that point, so much of my life and my friends' lives have a professional emphasis, and to just think, like, what would it mean if we didn't talk about work? And so these spaces that I think many people pity or are afraid of also have something really illuminating and vital happening there. And I think I started recognizing that there is a loss that people who don't have a relationship to the elderly experience, and that we lose something by kind of segregating society through age and illness. Yeah, and then it's not just the people in nursing homes who are suffering.
So can I ask a question? Do you feel after finish the book, you feel more relief, or you feel more like burden to yourself?
Oh, Meimei, I feel that behind that question is someone who also makes work and also understands, yeah, it's complicated. It's weird when you're done, you're not really done. I mean, it's very strange because I think like your work and stages are tapping into really important undercurrents of what it means to be alive, and those don't go away. And I think right now we're in a moment where nationally those undercurrents are really coming into view, and the conversation is evolving, and I don't feel relaxed. I don't feel relieved. I mean, I feel really proud of this book, but I also suddenly feel a ton of urgency around, I guess, the politics related to this project, and also, I guess, kind of the emotional work that the project asks of us, and to share that. And I think so many artists struggle with like, how do you share and talk about your work? And yeah, so that's hard, but it's really nice to share this event with you because yeah, sharing it is its own work. Okay, off to you, Meimei.
On that note, it is time to share our event with our next featured guest, Mei Mei Chang. I would love for you all to, from your seats, give her a round of applause, from your homes, viewers. Mei Mei, if you would like to hop on here and tell us a little bit more about yourself and your experience as an artist, and we can start sharing some of the work that you've sent me to present here whenever you're ready.
I've been practicing making art for many years, and mostly like mixed media and installations. If you don't mind, put out the slides. That'd be really nice, so I can talk. You know, I know we don't have much time, but I will prefer to listen to Rachel. But anyway, so yeah, okay. So the first slide, we can go to the. Let's see what we have. Okay, so I'm working on the book as well, but when I started is I was thinking about my son and who is a teenager. He's 14 years old now. So you know, there's a lot of children's book about that, but then most of them I read some of them, but I want to make my own. So I started thinking about my son asked me the question like, what's that? So that's the basic, when I started thinking about a couple years ago. So then I was using the pig as a figure because, as I see, there's no race difference and there's no age difference, and they're all the same. And then the picture on the left. So I remember I watched Trevor Noah's interview. So he was talking about in South Africa, people like put their body on the ground as a crop, and then so they grow the crops and vegetables. And so to me, that's really intriguing. Like I was like, wow, that's interesting. And then I start tagging to different cultures. As probably some, like Tibetan has like a sky burial. You put the dead body out, and then the birds, animal come and eat them. So there's so many ways to process the death afterwards. So that's about that. And then I start have like definitely Facebook is one of the place you kind of connect to people without seeing them. So I start see a lot of people pass away on Facebook, like post pictures, memories, and throughout the years. So I start like collect all the pictures. Some people I don't know, some people I do know, and some people are acquaintance, and some people I love dearly. And so I start have the picture of them. So I start doing embroidery, and so hopefully I have a whole collection of the people I know I don't know. So that's the basic for now. Thank you. And there's the other picture. I think I have one more. Yeah. So yeah. So those is she's the one, the local artist, and she passed away, which is really sad. But then so yeah. So this is kind of like a theme I'm working on right now in progress. That's it.
There's one more if you want to talk about this last piece, Mei Mei.
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite quote from Dalai Lama. If you think you are too small to make a difference, try sleeping with mosquitoes. So that's one of my favorite quote from Dalai Lama. And I think oftentimes I think I'm too small to make an impact. But then, again, if I can make something small to impact somebody, and I'll be grateful. And I think same as Rachel, like her book inspired me today because she was, involved with so many people, and then the whole process, I think it's not easy, but she made it through, so which is really nice. Yep, that's it.
Meimei, are you still working on the embroidery project from what you encounter on social media?
Yeah, I do.
I think that's so amazing that you do that. I think one of the weirder aspects of living through this moment is how frequently we encounter death on social media, and how you just can see it while you're scrolling in between photos of like someone's lunch and someone's vacation. And I think these conversations and stages have led me to feel like it's really dangerous, like what happens if we don't take time to process. And I still don't really know what it means to do that while I'm on social media. Like I know that I should. And identifying it as like a first step, but I'm so, yeah, I'm very inspired by what you do, and by like the way that it asks us to slow down and acknowledge that these are people. And I've been very weirded out and disturbed by the lack of like public monuments or placards of people's names who have died during this time especially. And it's really heartening to know that you're out there sitting with that and doing something that's so labor intensive and takes so much time.
Yes, it does, because oftentimes people think I'm patient, but it both take a lot of time and patience, that's for sure. Yeah.
I would love to. So we have one comment here, and we're not going into the Q&A yet. I would love to have you all talk a bit more between the two of you about your work and all of these themes. But we did have one comment from Jim, who said, "I don't have a question, just wanted to mention that this discussion has been very timely and helpful for me. My father died last week, and while he had good care and I was able to spend all of his last 4 days with him, this is a good reminder to take the time I need to grieve properly." So that was a really important message from one of our viewers tonight. And thank you so much, Jim, for sharing that with us. As we move forward, a question I have for both of you is, how has making your respective works changed the lens through which you see everyday life? Like, have you noticed differences in the way that you see your life or the lives of people around you, passersby? Is there a new way that you look at the world after and during having made these works?
Rachel, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Well, first, just thank you, Jim, for sharing that. And I'm glad you're here. And I'm also very sorry. This must be a very hard time to lose a family member. And yeah, I think it's really hard that we can't gather in person. I've also lost some family members during this time, and it's been very weird to not go through that experience collectively. And I still feel it all of the time, because I think I haven't like processed it in the way that so many of these interviews and conversations with nursing home workers really show us is vital. But yeah, I mean, I feel anger a lot of the time in a way that I think I didn't before, because I think I have a better sense of the structural working of healthcare in a way that I was, that I think is really obscure and hard to understand. And now, yeah, I think I see a lot of failure in our electoral system, and I feel so I feel a lot of frustration with the system as it's built, because I understand a little bit of how it's been made, and that these were choices, and I feel more politically I guess ignited, but I think it does, especially in this moment. I mean, it's weird. I think so much of stages is about absences, from literal loss to the absence of care to the absence of time to grieve. And I feel much more attuned to what is not happening. So like I was saying to Meimei, I notice all of the time whenever I go to a park, I'm like looking for a memorial. It's not there, or I'm looking for I guess news around better protections for nursing home workers, or I'm starting to pay attention to union efforts amongst healthcare workers, especially around like the Nursing Home Workers Bill of Rights, and there's nothing. So I'm just I think without this process, I could have just moved through life and felt like this is a bad time. And right now I feel like, yeah, an acute sense of what I feel kind of powerless to do on my own, but that I wish our society could do.
Thank you. Yes. We have a few more minutes, so I'm gonna go ahead and open up the conversation or the Q&A to our viewers. So if you're watching at home, go ahead and take a moment to type your question into the chat, and we'll keep talking for a few minutes while we wait for some questions to roll in. This has been a really incredible conversation. I feel like this was a great match in terms of I couldn't have picked better people myself. I said
I'm
that.
surprised. Yeah, I'm surprised how similar Rachel and I were thinking the kind of similar path, but in different formats. And then now she's become more realistic, more practical in terms of like politics. And I'm still on the denial part. And then so when I turn thinking about like death, like oftentimes with denial, like we don't even know because we're not there yet, or maybe we're there, we just don't know. So I mean, this definitely made me think about a lot, because I have a son, so I had to think about what's next for him most of the time, besides just me by myself or family. So that's a really long process. And it's going to be a lifelong journey, I guess. And so we'll see how it goes.
A question in that case, that's a really powerful point that you just made. I wonder, what are some of the milestones during that journey that have been most significant to you? If it's a long journey, what are some of the most?
I don't know yet. I had to think about it. So, well.
Meimei, would you be able to share what you shared with us before we went public? Like that saying, I think kind of marks some milestones that is really beautiful, or the full circle maybe.
Okay, so yeah, earlier I was talking to Rachel briefly. So I asked her about her title, about the stage. Then she explained it to me. Of course, like stage, like you think about theater, you think about different kind of period time in your life. And that's in Chinese phrase. There's like a saying, when you're 30, when you see mountain as a mountain, when you see, but then when you're 40, you see mountain is not mountain anymore. But when you turn to 50, mountain, and I'm going to go back, so I might be wrong, but then the age-wise. But anyway, so then you see mountain again as a mountain. So pretty much the same as like a stage, as a title, like a different period time, then you see things differently, and then you experience differently. But once you go through the old stage, I guess, old period time, then you pretty much go back to original because your thinking process will change and, throughout the years. So, and that's the perfect for Rachel's title, stage.
I love that. It's confirmation for me that everything in the middle is what's weird. And that maybe art, I mean, I think like art that does speak to the subconscious helps remind us that, I don't know, the mountain is the mountain.
And I also like the cover because, as I mentioned earlier with Rachel, like it's simple, but also really simplicity. And you don't give a lot of information, like, and then you have a lot of space to visualize what that means stage or what that means, whatever she wants to tell us. So, yeah, it's nice. And then at first I thought like, thumbnail or fingerprint, so which is really interesting. Yeah.
Thumbprint.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's on all of the Wait, right, Erin? All the thick press books have a thumbprint, and is that to represent how human they are? I'm not sure, actually.
I feel like when you describe it, you lose the right. You lose the meaning. But Julie came up with a thumbprint way at the beginning, and that's our logo, and that's on every book. And it's in a similar place. It's like near the spine, and all
where you would hold it.
Mm.
Yeah. No, you picked up on so much, Meimei, that Julie thought about really intentionally, who designed this cover. And we wanted it to be really open-ended. There's so much blank space in the book, hopefully so that a reader can like feel and bring your own interpretation to what an interview feels like. So thank you for picking up on all of that and drawing our attention to it.
We have a question from Kodaco Entertainment Company. It says, how does performance and art express truths about death?
Little question.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I discovered in the process of working at this nursing home was that we really need ceremony and ritual around these heightened stages of life. You know, that's also true for birth. It's true for coming of age. It's true of death. And that ceremony and ritual can take so many shapes. It can be religious. It can be more of just like a community ceremony, but I think art is another way of getting there and of inviting a public in who may not share the same cultural background. And especially when there's a kind of societal taboo around a subject, art can often be kind of a way of breaking through that. So Meimei, what's your answer to this impossible question? But thank you for this question. It's so important.
Well, I think you said it well. So
Yeah, I still ask myself that question. I'm always, and I talk about this with Erin too, I'm always unsure of the role of art and books in this space. But I come back to it, but I'm always questioning it. And I'm always asking the same question.
Thank you so much. This has been an incredible conversation. I hope that we can all continue having this conversation offline as well as online. I think that's all for questions from our audience. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I want to give you all the opportunity for any last words that you'd like to say before I go into my end of the night spiel.
Thank you so much, Shady.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rachel, Meimei, Erin, for being here. And I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen again so that you all can see the last bit of info that you'll need. Thank you so much, viewers, for tuning in. And just so you know, you can learn more about Rachel's other work through her website. It's Kauder Nalebuff.com. That's ITSRACHELKAUDERNALEBUFF.com. And that'll be linked on our website at lostcitybookstore.com. You can find out how to view and experience Meimei's art at meimeichang.website. Very great portfolio up there. And you can also find out where her next exhibits will be, or showings, or how to see more of Meimei's art. You can visit thickpress.com to find out more about their other publications. I spent a good while on there kind of browsing through what else they have on the proverbial shelf, and I think many of our awesome Lost City Books readers would be happy to see what they have there. And you can also order books from Thick Press through Lost City Books, like Stages. You can find Stages for sale at Lost City Books. You can order on our website or for pickup, or we'll ship to you. The book is in the store right now, and you can grab a copy and read about these things that were discussed today. I really love this book. It's beautiful. It's beautifully made. The comment that you made, Rachel, about the space is an incredibly effective part of the book. The accessibility, and something you all didn't get to see today during our readings, were that there are also photographs interspersed throughout the text of these just really beautiful visual moments that kind of accompany the work. So if you want to take a look at Stages, you can find it at Lost City Books. Again, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Rachel, Erin, Meimei, and to thank me for being here. It's been a wonderful night. I hope that we can all stay in touch after this.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Meimei. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Joined.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.